The difference between high quality videos and cheap looking videos isn't your camera's price tag, it's this one thing, your camera settings, which you probably don't know how to use. But by the end of this video, I'm going to break down exactly what camera settings you should use to start producing high quality videos. Because I've personally seen videographers use $1,000 camera to create videos that look like they came out of a $10,000, a $50,000 camera, movie grade videos. And I've also shot hundreds and hundreds of videos this year alone for businesses here locally. So let's get right into the camera settings that actually matter. Let's start off with right away the shutter speed and frame rate, or the 180-degree rule. This one is super important. If you don't know anything about frame rate, that's okay. We'll start straight from scratch. Frame rate is literally in the name. It's how many frames your camera picks up. Shutter speed is how much light is getting let into your sensor, so how fast it opens and closes. Think of it like blinking. If you blink super slow, everything has like more motion blur in it. But if you blink super fast, everything stays frozen. This is why you have to use the 180-degree rule, which is your shutter speed is going to be double your frame rate, because this rule mimics how our eyes perceive motion. So let's say you want to shoot 24 frames per second. So technically your shutter speed should be 1/48, but most cameras pick up at 1/50. That's okay. And then let's say you want to do 30 frames per second. Then your shutter speed should be automatically 1/60, and so on and so forth. This is exactly how you can achieve natural looking motion blur. It's because our eyes pretty much see exactly like that. The better and better that you become, the more you can start playing around with it and being creative. Pretty much this 180-degree rule is to make natural looking motion blur. But if you want super slurred or blurred, then you can start mixing it up. Or if you want super choppy, this is the way that you can do it. It all lies in your frame rate and shutter speed. But if you don't understand the second setting, you're still going to be stuck with this flat look. Number 2, this one's big, it's aperture, or f-stop as other people know it. Aperture is a little bit interesting because it controls two things, not just one. It controls how much light gets let into your sensor as well as shutter speed, but it also controls your depth of field. This is what controls when your background's blurry or if everything's straight in focus. Okay, but look, here's where it gets interesting. If you're gonna want that blurry background and you crank your f-stop all the way down to like 1.4, some lenses get that low, but some of my lenses were at like 2.8 or like 1.8, that's still really, really good. When you do that, you let in a ton of light and your image gets brightened up right away. But then let's say you want everything in focus and you don't just want a subject. Once you crank it all the way up, you can crank it all the way to like f22 on my camera, then the image becomes a lot darker. It's a little tricky to get at first, but once you learn it, it's going to be super easy. Just remember that the lower your f-stop is, the more light you have coming in and the more blurry your background's going to be. But then the more in focus everything is, like f22, the more darker the image is going to be. You might be thinking, okay, then how do I get a blurry background on like a really bright day? And I'll share that after we go over the last setting. I'll share a little quick tip that you can use to get that blurry background while still having a super bright day out. Because that brings us to the next setting, ISO. Because let's say you've already done what I told you. You're outside, you're shooting in 30 frames per second. So now your shutter speed is 1/60. Great. You want that blurry background because you're shooting a subject like a person. So let's say you put your f-stop at 2.8. Right now though, you'll notice your image is super blown out. There's so much light coming in. ISO will control your camera sensitivity to light. So meaning a higher ISO, a ton more light. A lower ISO, a lot darker of an image. But keep in mind that the higher ISO you go, the more noise is. So if you're thinking that if it's nighttime and you need a bunch more light, and you're like, I'm just going to crank my ISO all the way up. No, because it's going to become super noisy. Again, you can always be creative with this because some people love the noisy look, but if you're going for a natural cinematic look, you want to keep that ISO at a decent range. So going back to our example, if you're shooting at 1/60 shutter speed and you have an f-stop of 2.8, you're going to want to crank that ISO all the way down. You're wanting to minimize the amount of light that's coming in because your image is already super blown out because of your low f-stop. And here's the quick tip I said I was going to give you. So let's say you're outside, you're doing 1/60 shutter speed, you have an f-stop of 2.8 and your ISO is all the way down. You got as low as your camera possibly lets you. You say your image is still super blown out. Here's where an ND filter comes into play. An ND filter is a filter that you put on your lens to minimize less light coming in. This is how you'll see the most majestic shots outside with a blurry background, and you're thinking, man, how are they getting that blurry background if their images are not super blown out? It's an ND filter. It minimizes the amount of light that's coming in. I also wanted to give you a quick little guide on f-stop that I should have gave you when talking about it. So for close-up shots, that's when your f-stop is going to be super low, the lowest that your lens allows. A lot of them have variable apertures, so meaning your lens, once you zoom in, it kind of changes the f-stop that's allowed. That's on the cheaper side of lenses. But let's say you have a fixed aperture or a fixed f-stop. When you're having like a close-in shot, then you want to have an f-stop of like 2.8 or lower. If it's a medium shot, you want to be at like 4.5 to 5 f-stop. And then once you're super wide and open and you want everything in frame, make sure to have your f-stop or aperture at like something f8 or higher. That'll ensure that your focus is always dialed in, because depth of field and focus, they go hand in hand. Aperture is the main thing that controls that. If you're ever recording a video and you're like, man, why won't my camera just get everything in focus right now? It's probably because your f-stop is super low. And then let's say you also like, there's a lot of films where they'll kind of make you look at a subject. If you're saying like, let's say they want to point out an apple laying on a table, that's when you can use the low f-stop to just highlight that apple. But let's say you wanted the whole picture in frame, that's when you crank up that f-stop and you go higher. With these three settings, once you learn those, you're pretty much set. But here's a bonus. Your white balance is an interesting setting. I usually leave it on auto if I'm being honest, but I know a lot of creative filmmakers and videographers use this to set the mood. You can change a bunch of this up in post-production. That's why I usually leave it on auto, because most cameras, they're super good with it. But let's say you wanted to go super professional, super creative. If you want a more warm tone, then your white balance will be a little lower, like 2800 Kelvin. But let's say you wanted a more blue tone or a more moody type of feel, then you're gonna crank it all the way up to like 7500 Kelvin. Another time that you might not want to film on auto white balance is, let's say you pull up to a venue or a shoot and the colors are always changing, one room's different color. Then you can set your white balance and kind of adjust accordingly so it wouldn't be super messed up. Because sometimes your camera sensor does freak out and it kind of goes crazy. That's why some people like to shoot in manual, but I like sticking with auto because I shoot on an A7R3 and it's doing pretty good. But look at me and trust me for a second. With these 4 camera settings, if you learn these really good, you're going to be on a good way already. We'll do a quick summary, like really fast, going over everything and how you can use them to be creative. Your shutter speed, you're going to want to use the 180-degree rule, which is your shutter speeds always double your frame rate. This is where you can make the motion blur either super slurred or more choppy, and you can get a creative feel on this as well. Your aperture, this one controls the light and also your depth of field. This one you can make the blurry backgrounds or if everything's in focus. Third was your ISO. This is your camera sensitivity to light, so you're honestly going to want to keep it super low because it minimizes the noise. But again, if you want it super creative, you can rack it all the way up there and it will be a super noisy video. Then with your white balance, this is how you set the mood for it to be more warm or more cool. You can also do this in post-production, but if you really want to be professional and creative, do it on your camera. And again, personally, I like to leave it on auto. It's a lot to mess with on a shoot. So genuinely, again, with these settings, the amount of emotion that you can bring to the audience is actually insane. Yeah, a lot of it comes in post-production, but what you're filming, your depth of field, that one's huge. Your motion blur, your colors, everything together could relay an image so well. So congratulations, now you know what professional videographers are doing. It's mainly not their cameras, it's the settings that they're using. And I promise you, it's the same on a $1,000 camera or a $10,000 camera. If you're new to videography or you're just getting started, make sure to hit that subscribe button because I drop consistent videos to help you grow. But like always, build with purpose, move with faith, and I'll see y'all in the next one.